Imagine this. It's 1944. Europe is in flames. Entire nations are crumbling, and millions of men are dying on battlefields. But behind the front lines, something darker is happening, something that would later be buried, hidden, and suppressed. A report commissioned by none other than Heinrich Himmler uncovers a truth so brutal, so demoralizing, that it was deemed too dangerous for public morale. It was called the Spangler Report, and it revealed a reality about women, loyalty, and the disposability of men that still echoes into our modern world. What if everything you've been taught about unconditional loyalty was propaganda? What if history itself is the biggest red pill you'll ever swallow? Stay with me until the end of this video, because once you understand what this document revealed, you'll never see relationships or history the same way again. Subscribe now, and let's dive into the Spangler Report, the historical black pill they didn't want you to know about. The year is 1943. Germany is crumbling under the strain of total war. Nearly every man between the ages of 18 and 45 has been conscripted into the military. Entire towns are emptied of men, leaving behind women, children, and the elderly. For years, Nazi propaganda has painted the picture of the ideal German wife. Loyal, patient, pure. Posters and radio broadcasts remind women that their duty is to remain faithful, keep the household intact, and bear the burdens of wartime with dignity. But rumors begin to reach the high command, and whispers turn into worrying patterns. Reports surface of German women engaging in affairs not only with men who were still in Germany, but shockingly, with foreign forced laborers, prisoners of war, and men outside the supposed racial hierarchy. Birth records reveal children conceived in the absence of husbands. Morale on the front is at risk. Heinrich Himmler, obsessed with racial purity and family order, is deeply disturbed. To him, female virtue is not just a personal matter, it's a cornerstone of the regime's ideological foundation. If women are not faithful, then the entire myth of the National Socialist household collapses. So he commissions Dr. Walter Spangler, a demographer and sociologist, to conduct a study. The mission? To find out, once and for all, whether German women were truly living up to the propaganda image or betraying it. What Spangler discovered would shake the foundations of loyalty, not just in Nazi Germany, but in how we understand relationships across history. Dr. Walter Spangler approached the task scientifically. He interviewed women, studied birth registries, and analyzed reports from local authorities. The findings were stark. The propaganda image of the endlessly loyal wife was more fiction than fact. A disturbing percentage of women whose husbands were away at the front were engaged in extramarital affairs. These weren't isolated incidents. They were widespread. And the men involved were often foreign workers, prisoners of war, or men deemed undesirable by Nazi racial theory. This was more than betrayal. It was ideological heresy. One of the most damning statistics: in certain German cities, as many as 1 in 3 children born during the war could not have been fathered by the absent soldiers. These children represented living proof of infidelity, evidence that loyalty often dissolved under the pressures of absence, fear, and survival. Spangler's research revealed that women often justified their actions pragmatically. They needed companionship, protection, or resources. With men gone, women adapted. Survival came before ideology. Emotion came before abstract loyalty. For Himmler, the findings were catastrophic. Not only did the report show cracks in the image of the perfect German household, it also confirmed something far darker. Male disposability was absolute. Men could be sent to die by the millions. And the very women they believed they were dying for often moved on quickly, practically, and sometimes without shame. The Spangler Report was no ordinary study. It was a mirror held up to the ugliest truths of human nature. The Nazi regime thrived on symbols. The image of the faithful German wife was one of its most powerful, Posters showed women clutching letters from husbands at the front, staring longingly into the distance, halos of loyalty and sacrifice painted around them. But propaganda is always a mask. The Spangler Report ripped that mask off. It showed that behind closed doors, women were not always waiting patiently. They were making choices that clashed with the narrative the regime needed to maintain morale. Here lies one of the greatest contrasts in history: propaganda. Women were pure, loyal, the moral backbone of the nation. Reality. Many were pragmatic, adapting to absence by seeking new partners or resources. This gap between propaganda and truth was dangerous. If soldiers discovered the reality, morale would collapse. Why die for a homeland where your wife had already moved on? Why sacrifice everything for loyalty that might not exist? The Nazi leadership knew this. That's why the Spangler Report could never be public. Instead, they doubled down on propaganda. Films, speeches, and posters reinforced the illusion, even as Himmler and his inner circle quietly acknowledged the truth. But history teaches us something important here. Whenever propaganda tries to portray absolute loyalty, reality is often far more conditional. And the wider the gap between myth and reality, the harder the black pill hits when the mask slips. Numbers tell one story. Human voices tell another. The Spangler Report included testimony, and diaries from the time confirm its findings. A soldier on the Eastern Front wrote to his brother, "I have not heard from Anna in weeks. They say women in town keep company with the foreign workers. I cannot bear to believe it, or I will not have the strength to fight." His words drip with both longing and despair, a man clinging to the idea of loyalty because it was all he had left. In Berlin, a young woman confided to her diary, "The bombs fall every night. The children cry. Hans has been gone for 2 years. I never meant to betray him, but one must live. One must feel warmth." Survival and companionship outweighed abstract promises. Stories also emerged of men returning from war to discover wives with new children, children who clearly were not theirs. Some men swallowed the humiliation in silence, others left, and a few resorted to violence. The dissonance between sacrifice at the front and betrayal at home was unbearable. These stories matter because they humanize the statistics. They remind us that war is not only fought on battlefields, it tears apart bedrooms, families, and the very foundation of trust. The Spangler Report captured not just a statistical reality, but an emotional one. The profound disillusionment of men who discovered their disposability, not only in death, but in love. At the core of the Spangler Report is one brutal truth: hypergamy. Hypergamy is the tendency for women to seek partners who provide better security, resources, or status. In stable times, it may be muted, but in wartime, hypergamy explodes into full view. The absence of men created a vacuum. Women were faced with a choice: endure loneliness, danger, and scarcity, or adapt by aligning with the strongest, most available partner. Many chose the latter. Loyalty to an absent husband was no match for the biological and social pull of survival. This was not unique to Germany. Across history, in every conflict where men were sent away en masse, similar patterns emerge. Women secure their survival by attaching to men who are present, even if that means abandoning those who are absent. The Spangler Report was chilling because it documented this mechanism with cold precision. It revealed that loyalty, often romanticized as eternal, was in fact highly conditional on presence, provision, and power. For men, this was the ultimate black pill. They could be sent to die, and their wives could move on without hesitation. Their disposability wasn't just military, it was relational. The pattern is timeless. Whenever chaos strikes, hypergamy rises. The Spangler Report was just one historical snapshot of an eternal dynamic. Survival trumps loyalty. The findings of the Spangler Report posed a direct threat to the war effort. Imagine the morale collapse if millions of soldiers discovered that the women they fought for had already moved on. Imagine the ideological disaster if the myth of the faithful German wife was exposed as hollow. Heinrich Himmler understood the danger. The report was never released publicly. Instead, it was classified, circulated only among a select group of high-ranking officials. Soldiers at the front would never know. Families at home would never be confronted with the data. The Nazi regime doubled down on propaganda. Posters kept showing smiling women waiting faithfully. Films glorified the suffering but loyal wife. The reality was quietly buried. But burying truth doesn't erase it. The Spangler Report lived on in whispers, diaries, and silent disillusionment. Returning soldiers often knew the truth firsthand, even if the state refused to acknowledge it. This suppression teaches us something about human nature and governance. The more fragile a myth, the more aggressively it must be protected. And no myth is more fragile than unconditional loyalty. War doesn't just kill men, it destroys trust. For men, disposability was institutionalized. They were drafted, sent to die, and replaced without ceremony. The state treated them as expendable. And when they returned, if they returned, they often discovered that loyalty at home had collapsed. For women, loyalty was tested by survival. With bombs falling, food scarce, and husbands absent for years, many adapted. They aligned themselves with whoever could provide resources or comfort. Morality bent under pressure. The Spangler Report exposed how war magnified biological and social instincts. Male sacrifice was demanded at the front. Female adaptability was demanded at home. Together, these forces created a devastating cycle. Men died believing in loyalty, and women survived by abandoning it. This isn't a story of villains or saints. It's a story of survival instincts colliding with cultural ideals. But for men, it revealed something brutal. Their disposability was total. They could be sacrificed both on the battlefield and in the home. When the war ended in 1945, millions of men returned home to a different Germany and to different families. Some came back to discover wives with children fathered by strangers. Others found their marriages hollowed out by years of separation and betrayal. Many returned broken, traumatized, unable to reconnect with women who had quietly moved on. Divorce rates climbed. Silent bitterness poisoned households. And yet, society demanded silence. The myth of the faithful German wife remained enshrined in post-war memory, while the disillusionment of returning men was pushed underground. To speak openly of betrayal was seen as dishonorable, unpatriotic, or too painful. The result was a generation of fractured families. Fathers emotionally distant, mothers carrying secrets, children growing up in homes built on unspoken betrayal. The war had not only destroyed cities, it had permanently reshaped intimacy and trust. The Spangler Report, though suppressed, left its mark on the private lives of millions. Its truths lived on in the silences, the divorces, the broken families of post-war Europe. The effects of the Spangler Report didn't end with the war. They echoed across generations. Children grew up in households where loyalty had been fractured. Fathers often carried unspoken bitterness, mothers carried guilt or secrets, and marriages limped along under the weight of disillusionment. Many families never fully recovered. This generational trauma manifested in subtle ways: emotional distance, distrust, instability. A culture of silence settled over the subject. The official story remained one of loyalty. But beneath the surface, children sensed the fractures. Trauma isn't just personal, it's collective. An entire generation of men learned the harsh lesson of disposability. An entire generation of women learned that loyalty was negotiable under survival pressures. And their children absorbed these lessons unconsciously. The black pill of the Spangler Report wasn't just about wartime behavior, it was about how those behaviors reshaped the very fabric of family and society for decades. Why should we care about a suppressed Nazi-era report? because its lessons are timeless. The dynamics it exposed, male disposability and conditional female loyalty, are not confined to the 1,940 seconds. They're visible today. Divorce rates remain high. Infidelity statistics mirror the wartime patterns. Economic downturns or personal setbacks often trigger hypergamous shifts in relationships. We no longer need a world war to expose these dynamics. In modern society, job loss, financial collapse, or even shifting social status can reveal them. The Spangler Report was simply one of history's most vivid case studies. That's why it still matters. It forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, truths that propaganda, media, and romantic ideals often mask. The Spangler Report is not just a historical document, it's a black pill that shatters illusions, then and now. If you found this eye-opening, subscribe, share this video, and comment below. Do you think loyalty is timeless or always conditional? Let's talk about it. The Spangler Report was meant to be forgotten, but by remembering it, we gain clarity. And clarity is power.